Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming along to our talk today. So Pierre and I, we work for a company called Corval. So we are a monitoring and data analytics company headquartered in Ireland. We're particularly good at analyzing network data, and so we'll be telling you a bit more about that as we go along. For the past several years, we've done a lot of work with firms in the financial trading space. So these are firms who trade financial securities, such as equities, options, futures, and so on. And so we've done a lot of work helping firms in that space to monitor performance and activity within those sorts of environments. And more recently, we have begun using Spark as a platform for some of the projects that we've been working on. And so that's what we'd like to tell you about today. So first of all, let me just set the context by talking a little bit about the goals that our clients typically have when it comes to monitoring these trading environments. Usually top of the list would be questions around performance and technology risk within financial trading. So financial trading nowadays is a very automated industry, very highly automated. Machines are responsible not just for processing and executing orders and trades, but also for making pretty much all of the trading decisions around when, where, and what to trade within these environments. So hopefully that makes everything faster and more efficient. But obviously it also means that when things go wrong, erroneous results can accumulate very rapidly, leading to outages that may affect large numbers of market participants or potentially to financial losses. So one of the most famous examples of that, looking back to 2012, going back a few years now, there was a firm based here in New York, Knight Capital, one of the pioneers of electronic trading. They experienced an incident where they attempted to upgrade some of their software on their trading servers overnight, left the servers in a broken state. When they started trading the next morning, they executed 4 million erroneous trades over a period of 40 minutes or so, and the firm ended up losing several $100 million and needed to be bailed out by some of the other Wall Street firms as a result. So that's the kind of thing that can go wrong within these environments if you don't get things right. And a lot of our clients would be looking to monitoring systems to help them to detect and to rectify conditions that can cause that type of event. Performance, obviously, is also extremely important to a lot of our clients. So many firms out there, it's a very competitive industry, and typically there will be many firms who are using similar trading strategies. So if you are able to spot a profitable trading opportunity in the markets, then it's very, very likely that many other firms have also spotted that very same opportunity. And so whoever gets to execute first against that opportunity will be the one who makes the profit, so to speak. So that has led to a drive within the industry to ever lower latencies. So for example, order response times at some of the big exchanges nowadays would be well below 100 microseconds. So from the time that you send in an order request to the time that you get an acknowledgement back. If you're an automated market maker, you need to be able to respond to trading opportunities within about 10 or 20 microseconds in order to be competitive. So those latencies have been driven right down. Another area is client experience. So a lot of trading firms have clients. So if you're a broker-dealer, you'll have lots of clients that you are providing services to. And of course, you'll need to be able to show those clients that you are executing their orders in the best possible way. And you'll be able to help them understand what's happening to any orders that didn't execute in the way that they expected. And finally, there's compliance. So financial trading is a highly regulated industry. There are a lot of rules that firms have to adhere to. So those rules are designed to ensure fairness, for example, equal access to the markets for all the participants. They're designed to minimize financial risk, stop people from engaging in trading that is too risky. And they are also designed to prevent market manipulation. And increasingly as well, the regulators have become interested in the area of technology risk. And so they now also have rules around making sure that firms have monitoring systems in place to ensure that they are not placing the wider industry at risk. so those are the goals that our clients would typically be trying to achieve. Some of the challenges that they run into in these environments, it's a very distributed ecosystem, so trading is typically distributed across many sites. Many firms will have systems that are co-located in the exchange data centers. They'll be using strategies that trade across multiple locations. So it's necessary to be able to collect data from multiple different places and to correlate what's happening. As I mentioned, it's very latency sensitive. So from a monitoring point of view, that has two implications. First of all, it means that monitoring needs to be non-intrusive. So you don't want to be introducing additional latency just for the purpose of monitoring what's happening within these environments. You need to be as non-intrusive as possible. Secondly, you need to be extremely accurate. So in order to capture the correct sequence of events happening between all of these different places, you need timestamps that are extremely accurate. If you want to be able to measure those latencies, those very low latencies in the microsecond range that people are trying to hit, then you need basically to have sub-microsecond precision in terms of the timestamps that you were able to record. And you need to do that in a distributed way, so everything needs to be synchronized. Other challenges, there are multiple protocols in use here. Every exchange has their own protocols for order entry. They have their own protocols for market data. Usually they have many of them. They have their own data formats. And as orders flow through this environment from firm to firm, from place to place, they undergo many transformations. So the data gets transformed from one protocol to another. You also have change of custody taking place. So a broker receives an order from a client. They then execute an order on behalf of that client at an exchange. That's now a new order. It belongs to the broker. It has a new order ID. It has a new client ID. Everything about that order looks different. Different firms may use different symbologies, so they may use different symbols to represent the same financial instruments. We have parent-child orders. So in other words, a broker may receive an order from a client. They may then generate hundreds of orders. They may slice that client order into hundreds of sub-orders that they route out to different exchanges. So we have a parent-child order relationship, and we also have variable routing, because that routing of orders to different exchanges changes all the time depending on where the best prices are available. So there's lots of challenges. In the projects that we work on, the main data source that we're using is our own data source. So it essentially consists of Corval appliances that tap into the network data flowing within these environments and essentially eavesdrop on the network packets that are flowing between different systems and between different firms. So network data has a couple of important advantages in this context. So first of all, if you're tapping into this data using network taps or using switch span sessions that send a copy of the data to you, then you're being non-intrusive. So you're having minimal impact on the systems themselves. You're not introducing any extra processing into the forwarding path that could slow things down. It also means that you're not introducing any additional points of failure. And if anything goes wrong with the trading systems themselves, the monitoring system is completely independent and can be expected to continue functioning. So non-intrusiveness is important. Secondly, by tapping into the network at a well-defined place, and typically we would be doing this at the edge of a firm's infrastructure where they connect to external systems, we know precisely where we are getting that data from, and we are able to timestamp that data in hardware as soon as we get it. So we're able to generate timestamps with a granularity of less than 10 nanoseconds using clocks that can be synchronized accurately in hardware to external time. So we can generate very accurate timestamps for all the events that we see that are within about 100 nanoseconds or so of national standard time. And it's important for accurately measuring latency, and it's important for compliance too. So for example, the regulators in Europe are proposing at the moment that all of these firms should have to timestamp all of their order-related messages to within 100 microseconds of external standardized time. It is quite a tricky thing to achieve technically. You can't do it using standard network time protocols, synchronization protocols, for example. So the challenge, of course, with network data is that all of the messages that we see are from different sessions and different flows are all jumbled up, and we see them all in wire format. So we're looking at very low-level data. So essentially, the appliances that we use are solving that part of the problem. They're reassembling all of the network flows that are going across the network, and they're decoding all of the wire formats that we see, normalizing all of that data into a common format, which we then live stream out to external systems. And so you can see an example on this slide of the type of data that we produce. So we have timestamps, we have events representing orders being filled, accepted, canceled, and so on. And then we have selected data fields relating to those orders, such as what's being traded, what price is involved, what quantity. Data volumes very much depend on where you are looking within the ecosystem. So small trading firms, the data rates can be quite low. In a large exchange, you're looking at aggregated data from thousands of market participants, so the data rates are much higher. As a reference point, typical mid-sized broker-dealer, you might expect to see 10 or 20,000 events per second continuously over the day. So that's a reasonably modest data rate. At certain times of the day, you will see bursts to much, much higher data rates. So for example, when the markets open in the morning and when they close in the afternoon, they become much more active, and peak to average ratios of 100 to 1 and more are not at all unusual. So an average rate of, let's say, 10,000 events per second, bursting up to 1 million events per second during market open. Obviously, you want to size your processing cluster to cope with the average rate and make sure that you can buffer data during those bursts of data at market open without losing anything. So the platform that we have been using recently and some of the projects that we've been doing looks like this, except for the Corval piece at the left. It's a reasonably standard setup. So we take the live stream data from the Corval appliances, which may be distributed in different sites, different locations. We bring that into Kafka, which we're using as the message bus. We then have a number of Spark applications that will analyze that data in real time. And at the moment, we're using HDFS, HBase as our main data stores, and Apache Phoenix on top of that to provide a SQL access layer on top of HBase. And the goal of much of the work that we do is to enable our clients to be able to look at and analyze this data using common BI tools such as Tableau, ClickView, and so on. So I'm going to hand over to Pierre now.
Thank you, Pavel.
Thank you.
Right. So I'd like to walk you through the challenges we've met when building this solution and actually show you exactly what we did. So just a small step back on what the data source. So as Fergal mentioned, we are dealing with a broker-dealer. And what that means. So you got basically clients on one side sending trades or orders to the broker and market on the other side. Messages will flow through the broker infrastructure and will be picked up by the Corval monitoring solution, which are represented by the 4 little boxes at the top. Those streams, the box will send some events through Kafka that will be picked up by Spark. Now, once we get all the data in Spark, we want to do several things. First thing is we want to store a complete record of all the events into HBase in a very structured way. We want to allow to be able to search on the data later. Second thing we want to do is to calculate metrics. So we want to be able to have latencies for any message as they hop through the infrastructure. And we also want to have counts broken by clients or where the destination markets or sessions at any point. So this is kind of a high-level view of what the message looks like. So on one side, when the message comes in, we have information about the clients and symbol and an ID. But as the message goes to the next hop, we lose information about the clients. And on the last stage, we get information about the market, but no information about the client. So in order to be able to filter in point A what is all the messages for a particular market, we need to fill the gaps. So Spark allows us to join the streams quite easily using these IDs and parent IDs. And that's fairly easy using like the cool APIs that the Spark provides. So doing that, we build a matrix, and we use that matrix to fill the gaps, shown in green here, in the streams. So in theory, that works quite well. Now, those are different streams, Kafka streams, coming from different points in different positions in the city. And there is no guarantee that the events will arrive in the correct order. And as we deal with Spark streaming, the micro-batch aspect may even not guarantee that the orders will end up in the same batch. So one solution is to use Windows. That kind of solves the problem, but it's not entirely, doesn't fully solve the problem, because the micro-batch are based on the processing time. And really, we want to work on the event time. So what we do is we use a sliding windows of, let's say, 2 batches, and we reconstruct using only the event time, that is the time that the packet was seen on the wire, to reconstruct slices that correspond to buckets of time that we can use to calculate metrics. Storing metrics is one thing, and all the data. Now we want to be able to access that data quite easily, and we found that Phoenix was a good candidate for that, as it gives us a SQL and JDBC access to HBase. And that allows us to connect BI tools to it and also self-develop application. When running SQL queries on HBase using Phoenix, all the calculation is done on HBase. That works well for small sets of data, but can be a problem when working with large amount of data. So this is a screen that we built using these calculated metrics. First thing, this is showing the current last hour view of the infrastructure. What you can see on the right is quantity of orders that have been sent to a particular market, percentiles, max latency, and average per market. I can see like NASDAQ is behaving quite correctly, but NYSE and BATS are not doing quite well. We've got some red colors showing that the SLAs are not met. On the bottom left, we have a top 5 most important clients in the last hour, and we can see the number of orders that they have sent, and we can also see the latency that the latency for those messages as they went through the infrastructure. So here, clearly, that's not good, because we have a very, a not correct latency for our most important client, and that's a problem. Now, this screen also allows you to go back to average period of time. So I could look at the last 6 months or last year, and I could also go to any arbitrary point in time by switching to a historic view. Next thing is data extract. So we calculate metrics in Spark at the ingestion time, but sometimes you may want to, your needs may change in the future, and you may not be able to recalculate metrics easily. So we saw that Spark SQL, bringing the data from HBase back to Spark SQL was a nice way to solve this problem. So we still use Phoenix as a data source, but we don't do any calculation in HBase. And now we move the calculation to Spark. And that allows us to have more control on the resources of the cluster. So here's an example of a SQL query run on the raw data, showing us a top count by symbol. Using this extract, we can also bring the CSVs back to Tableau and build anything that you may want. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Excellent. I'll take questions. Anybody have any questions? Over there.
Thanks. I have a quick question. Maybe this is for Fergal. Do you have, you talked about nanosecond sort of sampling of packets coming in and different appliances distributed over a certain geographical area. Have you run into issues like clock skewing issues across the appliances, even though you're synchronizing with a common source? That's the first part. And the second part, how about induced delay due to packet reordering? Do you run into those issues of packet reordering when you have different packets coming in, almost that sort of frequency of time, just because of the network? Or are you controlling the network and you know that the routes are going to be pretty much sequential, one packet after another?
Okay, so the first question is about clock skew.
Yeah. And by the way, sorry, and you're not using anything. You say you weren't using an open protocol, like RTP or anything like that, right?
Yeah. So the ideal way to avoid clock skew. So basically, we'd be using a specialized monitoring NICs that timestamp packets in hardware. those NICs can be synchronized to external time using hardware mechanisms such as PPS, pulse per second, or PTP, precision time protocol, which runs over IP networks. So you basically need to make sure that those clocks are being synchronized using those hardware mechanisms to a radio-based time source. That's the most common way that it's done. So you'll have a GPS receiver somewhere that is providing synchronized time within the data center, and all your clocks are then hardware synced to that master clock. It's very important that it has to be, for sub-microsecond accuracy, it has to be done using a hardware mechanism such as PTP or PPS. So NTP unfortunately won't do it. It will only get you to it in about a millisecond at best.
And about the packet reordering, do you guys define like your own sort of stack in there for real timeness, or is it an open sort of protocol? If you can disclose that, of course.
So that's the actual processing that we do on those appliances. So everything that they do is done in real time. So the recognition of network flows, decoding of all the data, assembling that data into event streams that we then publish externally, that's all done in real time. Typically, the maximum delay there will be of the order of seconds.
All right. Anybody?
Yeah, I just have one question on the comparison metrics that you have. Today's with historic, right? So obviously the market is different every day. So is there some sort of a correction for a relative movement with respect to the market that you do? When you say that it's deviating from the norm, do you also take into account that market is up by 2% or down by 10%?
So you're talking about deviating from the norm in terms of latencies?
Not the latency, just the absolute numbers.
The absolute numbers are something that you set in Tableau in the GUI, basically. So you define what is your SLAs. The cluster do not decide that.
All right, I think we have one question over here and then another here.
Nice talk. One thing I wanted to know was the feedback, the information that you have about latency for different exchanges and stuff. Is it flowing back into trading algorithms or no?
Into what?
Into the trading algorithms?
I think it potentially could be. I think that at the moment most of our users don't use it that way, so they're more interested in using it to understand and optimize their IT infrastructure. So it's a great data source in terms of those accurate timestamps are great, but the data that we have about orders and trades, that data actually exists in many different places, so we aren't necessarily always the best source of data for some of the use cases that you mean. But certainly in terms of understanding how the IT infrastructure is performing, that would be the primary use case for the data that we provide.
Yeah, I think this information is very useful, and especially if it could be integrated into order routing mechanism, it could have a tremendous benefit to those algorithms.
Thank you.
You had one?
So what's the approach for high availability, especially with Spark streams? How you can duplicate or whatever, make it safe if something is failing during the processing?
So we use checkpointing to make sure that we can recover from any downtime. Don't know.
All right, and let's have one last question over there.
You mentioned that you observe data in a non-intrusive way. Is it like it's persisted somewhere and you read it from there, or the data is flow and you have something custom? If you could share.
You would tap the network and you would get a physical copy of the packet. So that's how we do it passively. You would tap physically the network to the device, to the monitoring solution.
All right, let's give our presenters one more round of applause.